Good morning, Legacy. We have a chief concern today, and it's a really important topic and a heavy subject we're going to be on. But before I get to it, I just want you to know that if you will whine in public that there's nothing red in your closet, kind people will take care of you. I learned to dress myself several years ago. I hate to tell you how far back, but I did. But I've never learned to dress appropriately, and so the compassion class took care of me. I came yesterday morning, and there's a steam shirt hanging right there. So Ryan Fletcher, I saw him. He and I have the same shirt, just a minor change in sizes is the only thing that I noticed. I also have been up till now impressed with your creative team and communication team at church. My opinion lowered this week. I got an email telling what the topic was today, why marriages don't work. And I thought, why would those people actually stick with the title I gave them? That seems stupid to me. They should have red flagged that and said, no, you're not allowed to use that title. But they went with it. And I know that is about as a morbid title. Who would come to church to hear why marriages don't work? But I can tell you it's one of the most emotional subjects you'll ever hear me speak on. The reason I chose the title and submitted it is pretty simple, is it's true, and we're going to talk about and turn a light on for why home is not what it ought to be. I'm sick of bad marriages. I'm so sick of them. I don't know why in the sovereignty of God he put me at the intersection he did, but somehow he did. And so day one of I was 22 years old. I was full-time. I'd gotten out of college. We're moving in, and day one, as we're unloading the truck, there's a man standing there and go, I'm in your church. Would you visit with me and my wife? My first appointment as a 22-year-old kid was in an empty church office with 3 metal folding chairs. While she said it was wrong to marry you, I don't intend to stay married to you, and we talked about their kids and their life. My administrative assistant through the years has held babies on her lap while parents fought it out in my office. And then one would get in the Camaro and head one direction, and one would get in the Dodge Ram and head the other direction. I'm not so naive as to believe that I'm talking about somebody else out there. I suspect that some of you will sit very quietly, almost afraid to nudge the person next to you, almost afraid to even breathe at some level, because I'm pretty confident we're dealing with some of those same issues here. When the marriage relationship is great, it's indescribably good. In fact, there's something sacred and holy about a great marriage. I'm not making those words up. That's actually Ephesians chapter 5, sacred and holy. The marriage is very good. In fact, sounds like a jump, but it's not. If you would ask God and say, God, what's heaven like? Could you give us something so we'd have an idea? His most common answer in Scripture is to point you back to a great marriage and say, do you see that great marriage? It's a shadow of heaven. A great marriage is like a shade tree. A great shade tree, it shades those who are the couple, but it shades more than that. It shades the legacy of that family. It gives a place of rest and security. And not just for that family, the whole community has the shade tree. And some of your homes are that. You make a great difference. But when a marriage is poor, it's indescribably painful. Not only does it steal from the two, but it steals from the sacred and holy it was meant to be. And it leaves the children and the community in a worse place. And some of you have the fresh wounds. So why are some marriages good and some marriages bad? Why do some flourish while others flounder? That's going to dominate our time this morning. If you're new to us or you're just checking in on this, last week we dealt with a family of one. We dealt with singleness, a kingdom perspective on it. And it sounds terrible, but I'd send you back to that and say, I think that's pretty significant if you are single or want a kingdom perspective on it. Today will be why marriages don't work. I'm going to leave you with a to be continued. It's got a dash. I don't know if I'm going to call it a cliffhanger or not, but I promise you, you got to come back next week. You don't come back, we're going to come hunt you with a stick and beat you, okay? Come back next week, all right? Because next week's actually the answer. how do marriages work and how do you make it work. I don't know the current statistics for this year, but I know what they are historically for our country. Historically, the numbers go like this, that if you go down any block in America and knock on 5 homes to check on the condition of their marriage, and you ask this question, do you have the kind of marriage you want your children to have? Out of those 5 homes, 2 of the first 5 that you're going to come to are saying no. We already have a divorce in our family, we will get a divorce in our family, or we hang at the abyss of it, we talk about it a lot. So 2 out of the 5. If you go to the next 2 out of the 3, and you ask this question, do you have the kind of marriage you want your children to have? Their answer is, well, we're going to stay married the rest of our life, and we will be married. But no, we would want our kids to have something better. I don't know if you're doing your math or not, but that's 80% of all American marriages would not want their children to have what they have. Only 1 in 5. If I only had a 20% chance of surviving, driving from here to 435, why would I go? But we get married all the time because we hope something's going to be better, and it will be. There's a kingdom concept that can make it. But you cannot live where the world lives. If you do what the neighbors do, you're going to get what the neighbors have. Today is an autopsy. So what's happening? The easiest way I know to describe it, and all you're getting is just kind of the hundreds and hundreds of couples that I've met with, just boiling it down and trying to run it through a biblical filter. Here's what I understand. Everybody, we are all born with the instinctive desire to love and be loved. That's instinctive. Be ye saint or be ye scoundrel. Go to the deepest, darkest prison, go to the highest, whatever it might be. Everybody is born with the instinctive desire to love and be loved. The same way that whales go across the ocean or birds migrate across continents. I use this illustration a lot, but it blows me away. I grew up on a ranch, and a calf will hit the ground when that calf is born, and that calf seems to know instinctively to stand on 4 little sticks and try to stand up. I don't know how. It's never had one taste of milk. It's never had anybody lecture on milk. It has no idea what milk is, but it knows intuitively to get up and go look for milk because life is there. You were instinctively born with the desire to love and be loved. You go, well, then that should be easy. All we do is follow our instincts. No, here's the problem. While the desire to love and be loved is instinctive, the ability to love depends upon wholeness and character. That love, to actually love somebody, makes claims on you that only wholeness gives you the ability to live out. Love requires that you be patient when you didn't want to be patient, to be kind when you didn't want to be kind, to have the courage to speak up when you didn't want to speak up. Love requires that you be forgiving and forbearing and overlooking, and you give the benefit of the doubt, and there's all kinds of things. Love requires you stay committed, even when your emotions may be shouting at you in different ways. And wholeness and character, they're the only thing that will allow you to stand in and do love. I don't know if you want a metaphor or not, but the best way that I would do it would be this. We talk about loving from the heart, and I think that's actually a fair metaphor. I think the desire to love comes from the heart, but that's not actually where completion of love occurs. Completion of love requires you reach into your backbone and pull out what love requires. And so the concept of I will love from here, but my ability to love comes out of that backbone. For some of you, I'm going to get pretty close into some of your emotions. I don't know your story, but I can tell you from my experience, your dad wanted to love you. There was nothing so broken about you and so worthless, and your dad looked at you and said, hey, you're 5 or 7 or 9 or 12, and you're nothing to me. I could care less about you. You weren't so broken and worthless, your dad wanted to walk away because of that. You were not such a broken, flawed individual that he would say, you know what, your mom and you don't even matter to me. I'll about guarantee you that's not your story. I'll about guarantee here's your story. Your story is your dad wanted to love you. I'm going to guess your dad had tears run down his cheeks on occasions onto a pillow. I'm going to guess that your dad on occasions got into the pickup when he left in the morning and he slammed his fist on the steering wheel of the F-150. And your dad was so frustrated because here was probably where the problem came. Your dad wanted to love you, but your dad didn't have enough wholeness. Your dad didn't have enough character. Your dad didn't have enough completion. And so your dad reached into his backbone and he kept coming out empty-handed, like drilling a well that is dry on the bottom. And at first your dad beat himself up, maybe even drank to cover up what he was feeling. But you can only blame yourself so long before you have to do one of two things. You either have to humble yourself and go chase after being taught and somebody help me be repaired, or you switch to the great American game called blame. This is your fault. If you just talk more, if you just talk less, if you just would walk across the floor differently, if your just eyebrows would operate differently, if you just were this, if you just were that, and you got blame up to here. But that never was the problem. Wholeness is the problem. There's a reason we don't let 9-year-olds get married. They're not equipped. It requires a wholeness. You say, well, maybe they should just try harder. Well, trying is good, and I'm going to tell you, anybody in this room, trying harder sure beats the heck out of not trying. Okay, I get that, but no, the answer is not just trying harder. I'm doubting if anybody in this room has confused this body for a runner's body. Okay, I'm guessing you're not confused on that. But if you could come to me today and say, hey, Randy, we need you, or we'd really like you to run a marathon today. You know, we're going to motivate you. We'll end world hunger or something if you'll run 26.2 miles and run every single step of the entire 26. Motivate me highly. Do you think I'm going to be able to run a marathon? Careful how you answer that. Here's the truth. You can't try to a marathon, you train to a marathon. You give me 8 or 9, 10 months, we got a chance. You train to something, you don't try to it. If somebody in this room came up and said, hey, Randy, they told me I got a little thing on my brain and I kind of need a little brain surgery. You look like a nice guy. Would you do my brain surgery? I go, well, I'll try. There is something wrong with your brain, trust me. I used to say, give me 11 years and I can train to it. I've taken my birth certificate in 11 years now. I'm not sure that's the right answer. But you can train to a brain surgery. You can't try to it. And here's the number one problem. We get into relationships we're untrained for because we do not have the wholeness. And you think love is supposed to be some kind of a mysterious thing that shows up like magnets that suddenly do it. It does not work that way. If you do not have wholeness, if the individual who you love does not have wholeness, then all you have is frustration about to begin because we're writing checks we can't cash. And so the concept of why marriages don't work very much come down to repair. If there were more time today, and I'm probably going to say that 4 different times because I fight time today on this sermon. By the way, as I watch your clocks and all of that, time is relative. It depends on which side of the bathroom door you're standing on. But Luke chapter 6, verse 40 talks about a disciple being repaired by Jesus. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 talks about God making you sound of soul, spirit, and body. If there's not wholeness in your life, you're going to be a frustration to people. For some of you, you're in a season of singleness. Don't squander it. Your 5-year-old little girl someday, your 12-year-old little boy is going to need you to chase after wholeness. And don't cut that journey short. There's a great blessing, an extraordinary blessing you're going to be to people when you come to yourself, but you got to come to yourself in wholeness and wisdom. But pain comes to you and everyone else if you cheat and take shortcuts here. For many of us, we've already passed that point. We're having to learn on the job, and it's okay to learn on the job. Julie's sitting down here to my right. I remember when we were first married, and Julie and I have been married 48 years, and it's been a grand adventure. But I remember in some of the early years especially, I would catch myself starting to get aggravated at Julie. Why do you want to run the vacuum sweeper now? Why does it have to be this? And I remember aggravations of little things. If Julie just were, you would know the truth, it had actually very little to do with Julie. You see, love was making claims on me, and my immaturity and my lack of wholeness were pushing back. My bent to have things my way, my bent was what was pushing. Here's the real truth. Very few couples, and I guess I'm talking to some of you in this room, very few couples actually have marriage problems. Almost always it's the case of one or both are having personal problems that are tearing up the marriage. You don't repair a marriage with marriage tricks and marriage gimmicks. You repair the individuals so that the individuals have the ability to live what love requires. Proverbs 25:28 is an incredibly powerful passage for me. It says in that passage that a man without discipline is like a city without walls. The word discipline in that text is very similar to the word wholeness or the word wisdom. That a man without wisdom or whatever is like a city without walls. I want you to picture two cities, one with walls and one without. In both cities, they want the same things. They tuck their kids in bed at night and kiss them on the forehead. In both cities, they put the winter wheat away so they can use it next spring to plant it. In both cities, old men and women go for walks in the evening. In both cities, they play t-ball in the backyard. But the city without walls, come spring, it's all gone. It fell apart because there were no walls to protect it, and this one did. And here's what the writer of Proverbs is basically saying. Do you want to know who the most dangerous man or woman on the face of the earth is? It's not the scoundrel. Most of us don't let the scoundrel into our life. The most dangerous man or woman on the face of the earth is the well-intended, likable, charismatic, funny, sweet, all kinds of things you could say, but they do not have enough wholeness to protect the things that love requires. That's why the book of Proverbs will tell you to run from a foolish man, run from a foolish woman. It may not be because they're horrible people. It may well simply be they have not grown up enough. So how do you know if you're grown up? Let me just pitch out, there's not time on this today. Can I tell you that you do not have wholeness unless Christ has changed your story? All of us grew up with the Post-it notes and false stories about ourselves, and Christ comes in and tells me a new story. And if you don't let Christ tell you a new story, the true story, you'll still be living out the false narrative. You grew up as a junior high kid, and you'll still be chasing like a hamster in a cage. You're chasing after something. If Christ doesn't change your story, and you believe that, you're going to struggle. Here's the second thing. God gifted you with emotions. You have 25 to 32. There's some debate on that, on how many emotions God gave you. About everybody has the same ones. I promise you. I don't care who you are. I ain't got many emotions. You are not in touch with your emotions, all that amounts to, okay? You've got a box of 25 to 30 emotions, 32 emotions here. And what you've got to do is you've got to learn how to use those with some skill. Many individuals in the church have become spiritually mature because you know theology, but you've never let God repair your emotions. And so the angry man is still a man whose box of emotions is unrepaired. The woman who fights this massive insecurity, you're going to have to let Christ help you unpack that box. Your identity has to change, your emotional maturity has to come, your morality. There's some other things we could talk about. How do you do that? Let me throw 4 quick things. Number 1, you hang out with Jesus a lot. If you're not in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John every single day, I don't think you're serious about getting well. Go hang out with Jesus. If he's in the marketplace, you hang out with Jesus. If he's with the woman at the well, you hang out with him. Jesus is where your repair will be. Number 2, I would tell you to read Proverbs till you wear the pages out. Because the road of the fool and the road of the wise man are there, and you're going to discover, how do I live? How do I think? How do I breathe? And the book of Proverbs will be repairing you. Number 3, hang out with people who will mature you. Most of us in our immaturity is a reflection of 2 things. Either 1, I didn't let myself ever become transparent with wise and godly people, or I am a reflection of the immaturity of the crowd I ran in. We are a reflection of the people around us. So number 3, I would tell you, you've got to get with wise people. And it's perfectly fine for some of you to get a hold of somebody in this church and say, can we begin to meet for coffee? I'm raising kids and they have too angry a father. I am raising kids and they have too, or my wife shouldn't have to live with this. Would you? And you begin to build a community. Number 4, you got to learn to walk with the Holy Spirit. Galatians chapter 5 just says it bluntly. You have to be led by the Spirit, walk by the Spirit, live by the Spirit, keep a step with the Spirit. If you don't know how to walk with the Spirit of God, your flesh will drive you. All of that's for another day. But wholeness is only part of the problem. It's the big rock we start with. But we've compounded in our culture. We also have wrong concepts. What causes you to fall in love with somebody and be in love with somebody the rest of your life? What caused you to fall in love? I mean, you were at college and there were 2,000 guys and you fell in love with that guy. What caused you to fall in love? And you want to grow old together. What will allow you to stay in love? There are 3 concepts in our culture. 3 concepts that are out there that we believe for what causes us. So when you feel in love, you think it was this, and when you begin to stop loving, you think it was that. The problem is 2 of them aren't biblical, and 2 of them are dead-end roads, and 2 of them are the dominant things in our culture. The one we're not going to get to is over here. Our autopsy today, I feel so apologetic. Honestly, I do. All I got to say is please come back next week. These 2 have wrong ideas, and wrong ideas always leave victims. You can't have a wrong idea that doesn't have a victim. The 3 types of marriages, the 3 types of beliefs that we have on how marriage works or relationships works are these. The first one is about 40% of all American marriages are this one, 35 to 40%. It's the idea that I'll love you if. Now, I'll stay with that in a second, but come back to it. I'll love you if. This one sounds much better. You go, well, man, that's a great one. This is, I love you because is the next one. Hallmark Cards has made a living off this one. I love you because. You go, well, this one sounds good. I don't think they like. Well, here's the truth. The first one is a 1 to 3 year marriage. I'll love you if you meet my needs well enough. That I fall in love with you because you complete me. You make me to be whole. It's a 1 to 3 year marriage. You may last 50 years, but you squeezed all the life out of it in the first 1 to 3 years. The second one, I love you because, sounds much better. It's a 5 to 8 year marriage. May last 50 years, but you squeezed all the life out. This is the one you want. It's a lifetime marriage, and we'll pick it up. Let's run with those just a little bit. I love you because. I love you because at its core is people who are not quite complete, not quite settled, not quite sure about my own life. I lean, and life's a little hard, but if I find the right guy or gal who loves me, I'll be fine. There are 2 people who save each other at some level. You've been conditioned to believe that somebody else's love is your great repair. All of you in this room have been to thousands of hours of relationship seminars. Thousands of hours. You watched the Disney movies, the Hallmark movies, and you had your playlist of your songs. At its core, it goes like this. You may be a bit of a beast and you don't exactly like your life, but if there's just a Belle who would come into your life, and Belle doesn't really like her life, but because of antler guy and all kinds of stuff and spitting and all that, and so the 2 find each other, and she sort of saves him, and he becomes a prince, and she finds herself, and this is wonderful. It's great. It is in Disney movie. Maybe if you go under the sea, it's the face out of the sea that will make me to be good. Or maybe it's Tangled. If I can just get Eugene or Flynn or whoever it is, because I got mother issues, and these mother issues are complex for me, and so if I could just have the right and just play them out one after another, all of them have the same basic deal. That I was just kind of feeling like a lost kid a little bit in high school. I mean, everybody liked me, and I kind of was okay, but he came into my life, and it's wonderful. The problem with this one, and anybody who's done marriage counseling, you've done 40 gazillion million of these. There was a bit of a hole in her chest. She was just a little unsettled. She's been the bridesmaid at 37 straight weddings. She's holding the babies of all of her friends, and life's passing her by, and I'm not quite happy, but I would be happy if the right guy loved me. He's a bit self-absorbed. I'm adding to the length of this sermon right now, but there's nothing more worthless on the face of this earth than a 13-year-old boy in our culture. Nobody needs him. He's not needed to keep the wolves away from the sheep. He's not needed for anything except, well, you take the trash out once a week, and you have this weird sense of humor, kind of go entertain yourself. And so boys become pretty self-absorbed because nobody needs them. But she kind of meets him and he meets her, and it's wonderful. The problem is 2 years later, he's asleep in bed. They've been married for a couple, 3 years, and she still has the hole in her chest. I don't feel pretty enough, skinny enough, talented enough, well-liked enough. I feel like my life is still, and she always believed if the right guy loved her, she'd be okay. And she still believes if just the right guy loved me. He's the same way. He's been keeping track of paper cuts, and she's not quite sexual enough, or she's not quite this, or she's not that, and she doesn't pay enough attention, and not this, and he's keeping his records, and what they are is they're keeping the list. You know what? I'm having to give more than I'm getting. This is not working out to my advantage. This is not happening. And basically, it's just a contract. And I'll love you if you meet my needs well enough. Nobody can meet your needs well enough. We're a culture that promotes this one. You came into life without any wholeness whatsoever. You didn't have any. You came in literally and metaphorically horizontal. And to find your wholeness, you had to borrow from parents. And so you're borrowing from parents. You're supposed to. That's exactly how God designed it. And you hope the parents were whole enough to help you. And then you borrow from adolescent friends. Nothing wrong with borrowing from adolescent friends. That's what you're supposed to do. That's the reason first grade girls, 7 of them, will go to the bathroom all together like one big amoeba. Why? Because they're borrowing from each other. It's perfectly fine. They're supposed to borrow their happiness and their joy. And it's the reason you see hypocrisy with a third grade boy. You've got the best third grade boy in this church, finest boy, until his cousins from St. Louis come. And the next thing you know, they're shooting out street lights with a BB gun. And you're going, you little hypocrite, you. No, he's not a hypocrite. He's a third grade boy who's borrowing his morality. You borrow from parents, you borrow from adolescent friends. We were designed to go then to meet our Creator and our Redeemer and begin to be made whole by Him and to live in a healthy, wise community that could help us. But we don't. We're a Ken and Barbie world, and Ken and Barbie got shoved on you so quick. 6th grade dances with boys and girls, and we want to pair up, and junior high stuff, and sophomores, and nobody's asked me out, and all of that, it just begins to tumble. I remember years ago walking through the foyer of our church, and she's a little 2nd grade girl just bawling on the couch, and I sat down beside her, and she just laid her head against me, a little 2nd grade girl. And I held her till she stopped crying, and then when I finally asked, "What's wrong, hon?" this was her response. "Mr. Gariss, none of the boys in my class will go with me. To the monkey bars, to the water fountain, where do you go as a 2nd grader?" And then she tore my heart out with the next statement. "And Mr. Gariss, in my class, if none of the boys will go with you, you're a nobody." The number one drug in America is not alcohol or marijuana or anything else. The number one drug in America is another person. I'm going to say to all of you in this room, if you have to be in a relationship to be okay, you'll never be in an okay relationship. Some of you need to apologize to a mate. You've been putting a great deal of pressure on them when, in fact, Christ has to be your healer. Your marriage cannot be. The second type, I do not like your clocks. The second type, I love you because of who you are. Well, good grief, that's got to be a good one. You're pulling a fast one on it. I love you because of who you are. No, it's a 5 to 8 year marriage. You want to know why so many empty nesters begin to divorce and all the sort of things that happen with that? It's this one playing out. I think it's probably 40 to 50% of all American marriages. Here's how it works. I don't do anything important up here. It entertains me is what it does. Okay. This one, what you do is you draw a box. You don't even know you are, by the way. This is not overt, it's subvert. You have a box in your head of personality traits that you connect with, personalities that you like, people that have common interest with you, people who can talk about things with you, and you draw a box. Now, you have the box, and you don't even know you are, but you're going, and I don't want to offend anybody, but you start dating, and you go, oh, no, not you, no, not you, no, not you, not you, oh, it's you, okay? Because why? Because the traits you want, lighthearted and witty and fun to be around, and somebody who's adventurous, and you want somebody who's, you fill the blanks in, okay? And meanwhile, the other person has a box, and they're looking, and in a perfect world, we found each other. And you begin to say things like, well, we're just so compatible. We have so much common interest. We just are so much alike. We have a chemistry. You just fill the blank in. And it's love, true love, okay? I mean, it is. It's what it feels like. And you go, Randy, what could be wrong with that? I found my soulmate. I found my soulmate. I'm not opposed to you having the box when you first start to date someone, because if you don't, you're going to date some really weird people, okay? It's okay for day one. It's not okay for a marriage. Here's what actually played out. I would get a knock on my door at the office. I can't tell you how many times this happened. And I opened the door, and she's standing there. And she goes, just in the neighborhood, live down 60 miles away. I'm trying to remember who she is. I did their wedding 10 years ago, not 11 years ago, something along that line. And she said, yeah, we're living down at Cassville, and here's Sean, and here's the boys and the two boys, and I just happen to be up here. And then she'll say, Randy, do you mind if we close the door? I knew that was coming. And she'll begin to bawl. And she will cry and go, I'm so sorry, I wasn't going to do this. I told myself I wasn't going to do this, but Randy, I just don't love him anymore. Randy, we're in trouble. But I don't want a divorce. I don't want these kids growing up without their dad in their life. I don't want to be. And she'll bawl. And then she'll get angry. Randy, he changed. Randy, he changed. Ever since his brother came to town, ever since he got that stupid job, Randy, he's changed. Just a warning, by the way, to guys, women's tears and women's anger about that far apart, okay? Really close. And she gets mad. And she begins to say things like, Randy, I want you to work with him. I think he would let you. And Randy, I want to be in love with him, but Randy, can you get him back like he used to be? The answer is sure. As soon as I get the toothpaste back in the toothpaste tube, I'll be happy to do that. You realize, don't you, that you change in personality a little bit every 6 months? You just do. How much change did you have between the age of 13 and 19? How much change did you have between the 19 and 29? How much change did you have between 29 and 40? How much change did you have between 40 and 50? I promise you, you're changing constantly. And here's what happened. Let's take just even one trait, lighthearted, witty, and fun to be around. What do you think took place? Well, this kid, let's run through a series of 6 months. Right here, he had a buddy killed in a motorcycle wreck. What happened, Mr. Lighthearted, witty, and fun to be around? Right down here, they gave him 30 or 40 employees to supervise. Right down here, he lost a parent. Right down here, they found the knot on his neck, and they call it benign. But we got to watch it, because if it does, it metastasizes. And now, every single trait, what you have is this is his box. And the most basic broken logic in life is this one. If you can fall in love with someone because of what they are, you can stop loving someone when they are no longer what they were. This one can't handle time. It can't handle time. What do you think the chances are that she changed parallel to him? She didn't. And as they began to drift, the core lie was, I love you because of who you are, but you're not who you were. So he gets really involved at work. She gets really involved with her career. He gets really involved with church. She gets really involved with the kids. He gets really involved. She gets really involved. And we just drift apart. And some of you, I'm telling you your story, and I'm so sorry. The problem is not the drift, not in itself. The problem is the lie behind it. My wife has every reason to holler foul. When Julie married me, most people would have called me happy-go-lucky, very outgoing, very social. I liked who I was. I perfectly fine. I worked my way through college in cabinet shops, and when I would get off work, it's only 100 miles to Tulsa. We could run down. We'll grab them. We'll do this. And I mean, I don't have to be at work till 7 or to class till 7 in the morning. And Julie had a very social individual. I came that close to getting kicked out of college my freshman year in college. I consider it one of the finest pranks ever pulled. They called it breaking and entering. Minor difference of opinion, just on how you, okay. Now that's who Julie married. Can I tell you, within a very few set of years, Julie's married to a very brown paper sack. I am quite happy to stay at home. If I never go to another party, I'll be perfectly fine. Happy to go to my workshop. Julie married a box like this, but she got a box like this. And if that's what Julie's belief system was, we'd have been in trouble because of my change. By the way, for what it's worth, the 21-year-old girl that I married, she's a different box now. Don't tell her, but she's a pretty different box. So how do you grow deeper in love through the years if chemistry and personality and common interest are not the issue? I know this doesn't sound very romantic, nor does it sound very theological. Dating in America and relationships in America are too much like picking out pups. Hypothetical story, but if you came to my garage, and again, there's not one there, but if you came to my garage to pick up a pup, you would get in the box and you'd go, no, I don't want that one, its ears fall over funny. No, I don't want that one, I don't like its coloring. No, I don't like that one, it's too big. No, I just don't like that one. And then you pick one up and go, ooh, look at, and 7,000 pictures follow, okay? And we're taking it home, and you love the pup. How long do you have it at home before its ears fall over funny like the one you didn't want? How long before its coloring changes like the one you didn't want? How long before its size changes like the one you didn't want? We're a small community where I live, and we have about 9,000 abandoned animals every year. The reason they're abandoned is pretty simple. Well, you got it when the kids were a certain size, and we lived at that particular apartment, and it had that, and the dog was this or that, whatever. But times changed, the kids moved, changed, the house moved, the dog changed. It did, and you just fell out of love because of the change. And what can you do if you fall out of love? We just don't fit anymore. Some of you are living a lie, and that lie is being whispered. There is a kingdom concept. All we can do is pick it up next week. All we can do is say there's something better. I want to finish with two things. One is light, sort of light, tongue-in-cheek light, and one is serious. Russell Dix is a marriage counselor in Florida. I'm going to read something he wrote. Russell Dix, a marriage counselor in Florida, provides a cynical vignette which describes a marriage that never took place. Assuming this feeling of love is irresistible, like a flood, many couples invariably find themselves standing before a minister to be married. Minister, do you take this woman with all her immaturity, self-centeredness, nagging tears, and tension to be your wife forever? The dumb ox, temporarily hypnotized by the prospect of being able to sleep with her every single night, mumbles, I do. Then the preacher asks the starry-eyed bride, Do you take this man with all his lust, moods, indifference, immaturity, and lack of discipline to be your husband forever? She thinks that forever means all of next week because she's never experienced even 1 month of tediousness, responsibility, or denial of her own wishes. So she chirps, "I do," in the thought that she's now become a woman. Then the patient minister parrots, "By the authority committed to me as a minister of Christ, I pronounce you man and wife." And as he does, he prays a silent prayer for forgiveness, for he knows he lies. They are not now husband and wife, and he knows that few of them ever actually will be. They're now legally permitted to procreate, to fuss, to bully, to spend each other's money, and to be held responsible for each other's bills. It's now legal for them to destroy each other so long as they don't do it with a gun or a club. And the minister goes home wondering, isn't there a more honest way to earn a living? In my early years, I was that guy. No more. This one gets closer. My mom and dad were married 68 years. And I promise you, watching them, you would say, that's what we want, and you'd be right. To watch my dad with my mom, to watch my mom with my dad, to hear the tenderness, to watch them grow old together, to take a look at the shade tree that they created for our family is phenomenal. I've got several relatives in the room here with me today. Some of you will tear up as I'm telling that story because I'm telling the truth. One of the most tender things imaginable. But you need to know that I'm the oldest son. I was born about 11 months after they were married. I didn't see much growing up. They hid it behind doors. I wouldn't have noticed. I thought it was just a normal upbringing. But I'm walking across the yard. I'm married, and Julie and I, we've probably got 1 or 2 of our kids at that time. I'm walking across the yard at our house, and there's a big tree, huge tree. I remember I was a little boy when Dad and I planted that tree. And I just made this statement to my dad. I remember the day we planted that tree. Man, that tree is huge. Now, my dad was very John Wayne-ish, okay? If you can picture John Wayne, that sort of fits in here. I make that statement, and my dad simply says, "I hate that tree." We walked probably as far from here to the back doors before he said anything. I didn't say anything. And he turned to me and he said, "The day we planted that tree was the day I was trying to decide whether to leave your mother or not." You see, my parents were over here. But my parents became the shade tree they were because of a choice to move here. Some of you in this room, I know, wouldn't get the choice. Somebody else had already made the choice. I get that. But I'm telling you, for some of you, I have no idea what a blessing you would be if you would give up the lies of the culture, chase after wholeness, and let's go park here for the sake of those who come behind us. I got good news. Great marriages are a choice. Let's talk about that choice next week. Heavenly Father, I do pray for the homes that are here. Father, every one of those you have designed in some way to be that shadow of heaven. And Father, I pray we wouldn't steal from the picture of heaven. Father, I pray there would be joy and delight and laughter in these homes. Father, I pray that there would be holiness and things that are sacred. And Father, I pray that there would be enough humility to be teachable. Father, not a one of us is not learning on the job. Father, make us be teachable people for the sake of the kingdom, for the sake of our families, for the sake of the community, for the sake of these people of God. In Christ's name, amen.